All righty. So, good afternoon, ladies, and welcome back. It's Tuesday Talks with Tonia. Today is the 29th of September. I cannot believe that it's almost October. Like this year, even in spite of 2020, it's gone so fast. Like 1 minute is March and we're talking about COVID, and now here it is, almost the end of the year. And I'm like, where did all the months go? But Lynn, just for your information, Tuesday Talks with Tanya, I started this about 4.5 years ago. And it started out just as a platform for women to come together to talk about just life. Like we deal with issues, we deal with children, we deal with marriages, we deal with work, we deal with stress, we deal with all these things. And so moving to Augusta 21 years ago, actually this year, I didn't have that kind of girlfriend connection. And Augusta was so, to me, disjointed. You had cliques of people, and I wasn't used to that. And so I decided I wanted to have something positive for women to come to be able to express themselves, be open, be honest, be transparent without feeling like they're judged or, like people are going to talk about them. And so started just a group kind of women coming together every other Tuesday. We have certain topics we talk about, and then it just kind of grew from there. And so about 1.5 years ago, a friend of mine who's actually in radio and television and all that, and he said, and it's a guy, and I didn't even know he knew about Tuesday Talks because it was for women. So he comes and says, hey, you should do a podcast. I was like, I don't know anything about podcasting. So he said, well, I'll help you. I said, as long as you manage it and, I can continue doing my platform, then I'm fine with it. And so he was like, absolutely. So we transitioned to a podcast, and I guess kind of good thing because now we're not able to meet in person, really. I mean, we probably could, but a lot of people are still, not sure about meeting in person, which I understand. And so this has been a great transition into where we are from a community standpoint and COVID. So we're able to meet every other Tuesday, 6:30 to 7:30. I have different topics. I have different, people that I interview. And then some days we just have a ladies check-in where, how are you? How are you coping through this COVID season? What are you doing that may help someone else? And so that's what Tuesday Talks is all about. It's about empowering, encouraging, and educating women. And so you being here talking to us about voting 101 is really critical right now for our country, for everyone who is of voting age to understand the do's, the don'ts, the whys, the why nots, the how to, the where to. So that's why we have Miss Lynn Bailey, who is the director of the Augusta Richmond County. I have to say it like that, the Augusta Richmond County office. And so, Lynn, tell us about yourself and your job and what you do, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be with you all tonight. And you mentioned earlier there are a lot of questions and things surrounding this election, and you're spot on with that. Everything is so different than what we're accustomed to, particularly with the number of absentee ballots that we're sending out by mail. Growing by 3,000 or 4,000% over what we would normally send out. And so now what we have is, at least, I think before it's all over with, well more than half of the people that will vote in this election will be voting absentee ballot by mail. But there are things to know about that that we can talk about later that are important. And with so many people availing themselves of this option, it's very timely. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
I was appointed as the elections director here in Augusta Richmond County in 1993. So this would be my 8th presidential election that I have directly administered.
Wow.
So it's not my first time doing the presidential election, and I will say presidential elections are different from any other type of election by far that we have. And I would even say that presidential elections themselves as standalone elections are different from each other. They have their own different personalities. The first few presidential elections that I worked, other than the pace of work, they seemed similar in nature. And then we had the election in 2008, which was the first time that President Obama was elected. And that year was really a game changer in so many ways. It was the first year that advanced voting really took off. So At that point, we had 45 days of advance voting available.
Wow.
And what we saw with that election is starting on about day 40 before the election, people began to arrive to vote. And when I say they arrived, I mean, there were lines from the onset almost. People were waiting in line 30 or 45 minutes to get in to vote. And as we got closer to the election, we saw the numbers of people coming in to early vote grow and grow and grow to the point that as we got maybe 3 weeks out from the election, we had a couple of citizens who actually passed out in our hallway because that's that's where we queued them up. You know, they were in the hallway outside of our door, and there were so many people in that hallway, which is not meant to be a holding area.
Right.
It was, you know how it is in Georgia, and October, it can be as hot as you want it to be.
Yeah.
And so once that happened, we began forming the line outside the front of the municipal building, and we would let 20 people in at the time. So we had somebody on those steps out front of the municipal building for 3 solid weeks, letting in small groups of people. And, you know, as time went on, we got closer. People were in line for an hour, 2 hours. They really didn't even care. They were just so eager to get in and get the ballot. So that was a game changer in that, you know, advanced voting really, really took off that year. And it was right after that we began to open up the additional sites around the county to alleviate some of the pressure that we saw downtown. And then, you know, moving on from there, 2016 also had a very distinct personality. And one thing I noticed about 2016 is the people were just angry.
Yeah.
You know, they were frustrated and angry.
Yeah.
And we saw that a lot in our office here in Richmond County. And then this election this year, I don't even have adequate words to describe it. It's been so bizarre in so many ways, what with all the online voting and things. So it has been an interesting ride over these 27 years. I can certainly say that.
I can only imagine. And like you said, just to transition each presidential election, and then you have to deal with the local elections too. So all of your local races, you're dealing with all of those on top of presidential elections. So I can only imagine the craziness that you have to deal with when those things happen simultaneously.
But it is crazy, but I find the work extraordinarily rewarding too, because, you know, just like what we're seeing with the absentee ballots now, and especially with Georgia's new voting system, what I saw as I watched people come in during early voting to use the new voting system, you would see people walk into the polls and they would have this look of worry on their face because they didn't know what to expect when they got in front of the voting machine. Would they be able to use it? Were they going to have issues? You know, how was it going to work? And so, you know, to help usher people through perceived obstacles like that, and then, you know, you see it on their face when they realize, oh, that's all there is to it. Oh, okay, well, that's good. So that, you know, you get a lot of self-satisfaction out of doing this kind of work too. It's exhausting, but
I can imagine. So, and that's one of the things I do want to talk about too. When you think about this whole voting process in Georgia and probably across the country, where they've either changed or shut down certain polling locations, my biggest concern, I think more so for anybody else, is the seniors. Seniors like to vote. Seniors are committed to voting, but sometimes the barriers that they have to vote don't allow them to vote. So is there any thoughts or mechanisms to help those seniors? So for instance, what if they can't get to the polling location that they've been reassigned to, or what if they can't read? Because some of them can't. You know, they always have to have somebody with them. So the obstacles that seniors face are quite different than what, you know, the majority of us who do go out and vote. What are some answers that we can do to help seniors?
Well, you know, as far as the transportation there's not a whole lot we can do about that. When we do change a polling place, we notify everyone, and, you know, and just hope for the best. You know, we post notices at the old place and route people to the new place and those type things. But transportation to the polls in big elections is a problem, not just for seniors, but there are other people, you know, that have transportation issues as well. So I don't mean to sound harsh when I say this, but getting to the polls is that falls to the voter to work that out for themselves. Now, once they get there, for people who are 75 or older or disabled, if they come to vote between the hours of 9:30 and 4:30, if they ask, they can go to the front of the line. And so that's a helpful thing. If you're over 65 or disabled, you can apply for an absentee ballot one time at the first part of the year and have that ballot mailed to you for every election with that one application. So that's also a thing.
Okay.
And lastly, Georgia has quite liberal laws when it comes to who can assist people in the voting booth. And so if you can't read, there are options. You can use an audio ballot to vote your ballot and vote completely independently if that's what you want to do. Or you can have anyone of your choosing. They don't have to be a particular age. They don't have to be a registered voter. They don't have to be a citizen of the United States. And there are no requirements around it other than the person assisting you can't be your employer or an agent of your labor union. And that is for obvious reasons, because you don't want anyone to feel like they're going to lose their job if they're being intimidated to vote, a certain way. So all those things are in place, and we do our best. And the last thing I'll say too, for people who vote in person, for us senior citizens, and I'm knocking on the door of it as I wear my bifocals tonight. When you step into the voting booth, if you can't see the print very well, with these new electronic machines, there's a very visible button right on the front screen that you just tap that'll make the print larger for you too. So that's a help as well.
Yeah, and those are good things to do, and they are helpful, and I think really it's about educating our voters and educating our community to help those that are in that position so that we have an answer for them. Hey, we have these options for you. I know it's a little bit difficult, or I know it's a little bit out of the way, but we have these steps in place to help and assist you. Can you talk to us about early voting? When does that start?
Early voting starts on October the 12th. This year we're doing something a little bit different. What with COVID and whatnot, we found that in the room at the municipal building where we've had early voting for the last 5 or 6 years, in that beautiful Beasley community room, we typically are able to set up 20 voting machines in there. But the days of us standing hip to hip as we cast our ballot, it's not the world we're in right now. And so by the time we spaced the equipment out, we knew that we couldn't have but about 12 voters in there at any given time to vote, and that's going to be a problem. And so we approached the Coliseum Authority, and they worked with us, and they have given us the Bell Auditorium to use as a big mega advanced voting center. So that'll open up on October the 12th, and will be open for 3 solid weeks, including one entire weekend of voting on October the 24th through the 25th. That's a Saturday and a Sunday from 9 to 4. So it's our hope by doing that, and by expanding voting at the 3 satellite sites that we use at Warren Road and at Brigham Center and at Diamond Lakes. We work with the recreation department, and so anyone who's ever voted out there knows that when you go into those facilities, you go into a little side room, a small room to vote. But for November's election, we're going to be in the gym and all these places, so we can have much more equipment, have it all spaced out, and hope by making those efforts that we're going to make it easier for people to vote in person, and hopefully quicker. And we can, because the last thing we want is to have overcrowding on election day. So we're really honed in on voting by mail through absentee balloting and voting during early voting.
And that's a good idea, because a lot of people are really hesitant now to go out anywhere, unless only a space that has a lot of people and you're that close. And I know that for people who have underlying issues, that they have to take every precaution. But I think with those bigger, larger spaces, you're able to really have the social distancing. And I know that everybody's going to do everything they can to make sure that people are following, one way in, one way out, cleaning the surfaces. So do you guys have a need still for poll workers or for volunteers to help with all of that coordination, cleaning and sanitizing? And
well, we obviously taking those additional steps at the polling place is going to require more people. We already know that we're going to need more people in a big presidential election year just because of the volume of voters that will be coming through. we made a pledge to our voters back during the March election when COVID, first started showing up. And most of you will probably recall that we had the presidential primary scheduled there for the end of March, and we ended up postponing it a week and a half out from the election due to COVID. And so the next election then was scheduled for May the 19th, which ultimately was postponed until June the 9th. Mm-hmm. And so during April, the Board of Elections came up with, I think it's a good policy for how we're going to manage the personal protective equipment. How are we going to protect our poll workers and the voters in this environment? And so we basically have a policy that's for all of our poll workers, they'll be wearing a mask. And anytime they're in contact with a voter, they're required to wear that mask. We also provide gloves and goggles for them if they want to use them, but the mask is mandatory. The hand sanitizer is provided not just during early voting, but at the polls on election day. From the time a voter walks into the polling place, if they don't have a mask, they're going to be offered one. They're going to be offered hand sanitizer at the door. They'll come in and they're using disposable styluses to mark their ballot with.
Okay.
We found this great product that's it's kind of it's a rubber tip stylus, but it's on almost like a thick straw. And so each voter will get their own. They'll use it to sign their name. They'll use it to mark their ballot, and they can either drop it in the trash when they leave, or they can take it with them. We don't care.
Okay.
We don't pack.
Okay.
So those are things that we're doing to help protect the voters and the poll workers. But it is the poll workers, for me at least, that we're most concerned about, because they're going to be in this environment for 12 or 15 hours coming in contact with so many different people. So we really do have an obligation to protect them. Having said all of that, we are in decent shape with poll workers.
Okay.
We're training right now. The Secretary of State has done a great job with poll worker recruitment. Through a portal he set up, we just in Richmond County, we have gotten about 500 names from that portal. And so we have all those on our reserve list, so that's great. Another thing that we did that I know y'all will all be interested in is back in February, we went to the Board of Education because we had this new voting system coming in with all these electronic components. And we knew that it was going to require a little different skill set to manage that.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to the Board of Education and got developed a partnership with them where we recruited high school juniors to be trained to work at the polls.
Oh, wow.
So, now people have asked me why juniors, why not seniors? Well, our thoughts were they were juniors in March and April, but in November they'll be seniors.
They'll be seniors.
Them, and they get the experience of working the entire presidential election, which is, I think, a cool thing for them to be able to do.
Yeah.
So for November, we have 110 students, high school students, seniors, that are signed up to work at the polls, and we're going through training right now. So our goal is to have 2 of those students at every polling place in the city. In addition to that, the Augusta University girls basketball team has stepped up in a big way. Their entire team, with 14 of their team members and their 2 primary coaches, are all going to work the weekend at the Bell Auditorium, and they're also on election day at the polls too. So those, that's 16 people that we know will have the skill set that we need to make things happen. So
right.
those are good things. Now, repeating myself, having said all of that, we are always in with people that have good computer skills.
Okay.
That's the bottom line.
Okay.
This equipment is sophisticated with the setup, and with the breakdown. And we need poll workers that recognize if they're working on the iPad to check voters in and it goes black like they do, that doesn't mean it's broken. It just means you wake it up. You and wake it up. And, if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
The young people certainly know that.
They do. If they don't know anything else, they know that. They know the electronics. They know those gadgets. But I think that's awesome to involve the young people in this process, because we want to teach them what the voting process looks like. We want to teach them this is your right to vote. This is the behind the scenes work, what goes into, casting your ballot, voting for whomever you want. They get to see firsthand, up close and personal. And we need to start younger, teaching our young people about voting, because a lot of times they take it for granted. No one's talked to them about it. They're unfamiliar. They're not even registered, some of them. So, I think that's a great opportunity.
I think you're right. And, even beyond that, it's a good lesson in citizenship and participating in your community, and they make some money. So everybody wins.
Yeah, that's good. That's even better. And they're not just volunteers. You're making money for this. So that's great. That's a great thing. So we have early voting begins October the 12th.
Yes.
And it goes through October the 30th.
That's correct.
Okay. And we have Warren Road, Diamond Lakes, Henry Brigham, and the Bell Auditorium.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that's good.
Now, the other 3 sites, the satellite sites as we call them, they will open for the first time on Saturday, October the 24th. So they'll be open that Saturday, not on Sunday. And then they open back up Monday, the last week before the election day, with extended hours from 8:30 until 6 every day that week, just like we always do.
Okay. So the only one that's open the whole time is Bell Auditorium. And
That's
then
right.
The last 3 come on that last Saturday and then that Monday before.
That's right. And here's another thing to just throw out there too, because I've taken it for granted that people might know this, but will not be opened at the municipal building. So the Beasley room will not be open. We'll move all that a block and a half down the road to the Bell.
Okay.
It's really worked out pretty well, frankly, because we can now use that Beasley room as a giant absentee by mail processing center space.
Okay. Yeah. So I can imagine you guys. Yeah. And that's good. Parking, because at the municipal building we have parking issues, or y'all have parking issues. I say we, y'all have parking issues, and so that alleviates a whole layer of issues right there by itself. The parking, the space, all of that. So that seems to be one of the best ideas that I've heard in a while, especially in the midst of COVID. Voter registration. Talk a little bit about voter registration.
Voter registration is heavy. Right now we have around 130,000 registered voters in Richmond County. If you don't know some background on that, it may not mean much, but I will tell you that in the presidential election in 2016, we had around 115,000 registered voters. So we've seen a huge increase in voter registration over the last year and a half or so. I think a lot of that has to do with work that third-party groups are doing through the mail and on the ground, doing canvassing and whatnot. We've had several groups very active in the Augusta area and different parts around the state that have turned in voter registration applications, just stacks at the time.
Right.
So that's going well, but the voter registration deadline is October the 5th for voting this election. And so if I may, I'll just talk a little bit about how someone can register to vote.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So there are many ways you can register to vote. I think the most convenient way is to go online to the Secretary of State's My Voter page. And if you have a Georgia driver's license, you can do it completely electronic. And what that system does is you enter in your information, including your driver's license or state ID number, and it goes over to the Department of Driver Services database, matches everything up, grabs your signature, marries it with your voter registration information, and that becomes your application to register to vote. So it's all done electronically and quickly. As the day after you enter it in, it gets to us, and we process it rather than putting it in the mail and it having to transition through, or depending on a volunteer to hand deliver it to our office. But the paper forms are always an option. They're available also from that same website or from our office or from our website as well. So the main thing to keep in mind is October 5th. If you are not registered to vote and you want to, now's the time to do it. And if you drop it in the mail, make sure it's postmarked by October the 5th.
Okay, that's good news to know. I mean, it's a short time coming up, but like you said, I've seen a lot of groups out. I went Saturday to Stars and Stripes, took my godson, and they had a table set up outside asking everybody that came in, are you registered to vote? If you're not, would you like to be registered? This is an important time for everybody to be a part of this voting process. So I saw them on different corners on Wrightsboro Road. So it is a big push to get people registered by October the 5th. So that's a good thing.
So it's going well. I know we have 15 temporary employees in my office right now. And we have a permanent staff of only 9 people, so we're a small crew, and we are, we're geared up and staffed well beyond what we would normally be, even for a presidential election year. But
Wow.
But when you add the extra voter registration and coupled with the absentee mail that are going out and are now coming back in, there's a lot to be done.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That's a lot of paperwork, a lot
Mhm.
of reading, a lot of checking, a lot of verifying. And you know what? It strikes me. And so for those of you who don't know, when I worked in the city, I would go down to Lynn's office for just different things, but they have the most quiet, efficient office I've ever seen. Like, nobody is rushing, nobody's rattled. They're just all calm and quiet and peaceful. And I'm just like, the volume of things that I know come through your office, because you not only deal with the voting stuff, but you deal with compliance reports for elected officials. So your office manages all of that stuff too. So that's a whole other beast on top of the, voting and registration and all of that. So it's like a well-oiled machine. I have never seen it out of whack, ever.
Well, thank you for those nice words. I appreciate that. I think it's because we're all so mature.
Yeah.
I think about it. When I took this job, I was 33 years old.
Yeah.
A couple of years later, I hired my assistant director, and I think he was 29 when I hired him. And then
Okay.
after that, I hired 3 other people. And this core group of 5, we are still
Together.
25 years later. We are
Wow.
still together.
Wow. And that's almost unheard of.
Well,
That is almost.
We've got a good thing going on there. We really do.
Yeah, you really do. So you are to be commended for that.
Well, I commend my staff. They're wonderful.
That's good. The other thing I want to talk about is we were going to talk about ballots, sample ballots. I get questioned all the time. Who do I vote for? So talk about the sample ballots and how people can learn about the candidates that will be on the ballot.
Well, the learning about them is the tricky part.
It is.
We can provide a sample ballot. That's easy enough to get. But there is no one central depository for candidate information. Years ago, the League of Women Voters did a great job of putting that information together, but decades ago. And that was the only group that I knew of that did those kinds of things. And I understand now that the league has some type of a portal or something on their website where they collect certain information, so that could be a place for people to go. But outside of that, I think we're pretty much on our own to
figure out
stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you had mentioned the sample ballot, so I can't stress strongly enough how important it is that people get their hands on one of those ballots before they step into the booth. This is an extremely long ballot in November.
Yeah.
It has 3 constitutional amendments and 2 statewide referendums and a great big Board of Education sales tax question on there, plus 5 school board members, plus 7 or 8 local offices, and you have that U.S. Senate race with 20 candidates on it. So it's a big ballot.
It is.
I had mentioned earlier Georgia's My Voter page. From that page, you can also download your precinct-specific sample ballot. So that's a great place to go to get that. And if you don't have access to a computer, you can always contact our office, and we'll do our best to help provide you with the sample ballot if you need one. No, I would highly suggest that people get it and look at it. There are a lot of uncontested races on the ballot.
Okay.
But one thing we've seen this year, even going back to the commission races in May, is the number of candidates that are appearing in every race. Most of you will recall, if you vote here in Richmond County, that with the Augusta Commission races in May, there were 3, 4, 5 candidates in nearly every race that was on the ballot. And we're doing the same thing with the Board of Education in November. Every race has 3 candidates in it.
Wow.
And so a lot of people interested in running for office right now.
Yeah. And it's good, because that's what democracy is about. You have options, you have people that want to run and represent, but it's up to us, the voter, to do our due diligence to say, okay, I've vetted this person, I've vetted that person, because it's not always an easy answer. You want to make sure you get the right candidate for these positions. I know as individually, this is me personally, I get so aggravated with people not taking the time to learn about who's running in their community because it affects you. And I can tell you my personal choices, but they may not always align with what you have in mind. So it's very important for people as a voter to vet those. And I don't vote popularity. I don't care if you're my friend. I don't care if, we work together, whatever. I'm going to make sure that I vote for the best person for the job. And I think too long and too often in politics, it's a popularity contest. And we don't think about the long-term effects once we vote somebody in. So the sample ballot will give you a guide on these are the people that you have an option of. But now it's up to you to go and do your due diligence and do the research and figure out who these people are, figure out what they believe in, what they stand on. And so I think a lot of times that's that missing piece for the voter. They don't necessarily do that part. So, but.
I agree. I know sometimes I stand in front of the voting booth or mark my paper ballot or whatever. And, I think about those things and you would think that I am solely responsible for electing the person to the office.
Right. That's how you feel. That's how you feel. You're like, oh no, I just voted somebody in that I have no idea who it is. Or, if this turns out to be a mess, it's my fault because I voted and didn't think or didn't, check. So, that's very, very important. How do people know if they are registered? So maybe they say, I was registered, I'm not really sure if I'm still registered, or maybe something happened, I moved. How do people find out that information?
Sure, we get that question a lot. It's simple. They can look it up at that, going back to my voter page. You can look yourself up there.
So is it called My Voter? Is it My Voter?
It's called My MVP, My Voter page. So if you go, you can just Google that, the Georgia My Voter page, and it'll provide a link to you to go to. And once you sign into that website, I've mentioned the sample ballots, but you can also find out if you're registered to vote. You can find out where your polling place is, get driving directions to it, find out all about advanced voting, where it's going to be and the hours it's going to be. So it's just a wealth of information out there. But if you don't have a computer or you don't have easy access to one, just call our office. We'll look it up for you. If we don't mind a bit, we do it all day long.
Yeah, and what's the number to the office that they can call? I'm putting all this in the chat.
Okay, so it's 706-821-2340.
Okay.
And that website is MVP, my voter page, MVP.sos, Secretary of State, .ga.gov. So
MVPSOS.ga.gov.
Yes, and there's a dot between MVP and SOS as well.
Okay, MVP.sos.ga.gov.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a great thing, and it's important. It's important, I think, also that voters should just periodically check on themselves and just make sure that everything is good with their record. And if you've moved, you can't assume that your address is going to be automatically updated because it's not. So then I will say, it's in our experience, people are good about changing their addresses in things that matter in the moment.
Right.
Am I going to get my water turned on?
Right.
And keep my electricity on?
Right.
You don't always think about doing things like changing the address on your voter registration. And so it's unfortunate on election day when people find themselves bouncing from pole to pole because they've moved and they don't know where to go, and they just assume they go here because it's near where their new address is, but then their address hasn't been changed. And and those
Yeah, that is unfortunate, and that you're right. People don't think about those things that aren't an everyday need or an everyday, interaction. So I know me, I moved from Richmond County to Columbia County, which I kind of hated, but I still keep up with Richmond County because I'm coming back to Richmond County. But most of my people, my friends, and everybody associates me with Richmond County, and I have a lot of Richmond County friends, and so I try to stay abreast of everything. But that was one of the things that I didn't think about when I moved, but thank God, I did get something in the mail saying, hey, you didn't do, because my mail forwarded. So it triggered me to go back and to update
Good.
the rest. So thank God I did that because, I was one of those people.
So
Okay.
October 5th. October 5th is the deadline.
That's October 5th. We talked about early voting, sample ballots, absentee ballots, talked about voter registration, how we know if we're registered or not. We talked about just about a lot of things. So I'm gonna open it up for Q&A. We have a few folks on, so if there's anybody that has a question for Lynn, you are more than welcome to ask now. We'll give you an opportunity.
No, I just want to say thank you for your service, Lynn.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Nobody else? Oh, we must have did a good job covering everything if nobody has questions.
But before we completely end, if you don't mind, if I could.
Oh no, we still have time. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So just a couple of things about voting by mail. The single biggest issue we have with ballots, excuse me, that come back into our office is the voter's failure to sign the back of the ballot. So that is the main reason why they get held up. And so, to the extent that that word can get out there, follow the instructions. When you fill out your ballot, the instructions tell you to color in the oval by the candidate's name. Don't put a check mark. Don't put an X.
Right.
Don't mark through who you don't want or circle everything that you do. Just color in the bubble on the side, and sign your ballot, and then get it back to us by the deadline. So those are big important things to remember. And also, if you don't want to put a stamp on it, or you're not comfortable dropping it off in the mail, be sure and use one of our absentee ballot drop boxes that we have around the city. We have 4 right now. They are at the 3 advanced voting sites and also at the municipal building. And I'm very glad to say that we have a 5th one that's coming in. It should be here Friday, and we're going to have that one installed in South Augusta at the service center where the utilities and tag office.
Peach Orchard Road.
At Peach Orchard and Rozier Road. So that one will be going in within the next week or so.
Okay.
And those boxes are secure. They're permanently affixed to the ground. We're required to have video surveillance on them 24/7, and we're also required to empty them on a regular basis. So it's a very secure way to get your ballot to us. One thing that's been kind of cool the last week or so, we've seen so many voters come in our office who have chosen to bring their ballot and give it directly to us.
Yeah.
That's been a fun thing to see, because when they give us their ballot, we give them a sticker, and I have voted sticker, so they really feel like they have voted. They've had that kind of experience of doing something proactive on their end and getting the sticker when they leave. So that's been a fun thing to be part of.
Yeah, and that's the piece about the secured boxes, because that's a concern for people across the country right now. Will the ballots be stolen? Will they be left like they're portraying in the mail, bags and bags of ballots being left in post office and stuff? And that's not you guys' fault, but those are concerns that people are having across the country, worried that their vote is going to be sitting somewhere and it's not going to be counted.
Yeah, one thing I will say about the state of Georgia, we've been often criticized over the last few years in particular with voter suppression and overbearing rules and things like that. But I will say, in my opinion, I think Georgia has some really good practices in place that help ensure, especially, that the absentee ballots by mail are secure. There are some states that require witnesses. We've had a lot of people in the last year or so that have come in questioning the witnessing. Georgia doesn't require that, but you do at least have to sign the back of it.
Okay.
But every application that comes into us for a ballot is vetted, and the signature is compared to make sure that everything's on the up and up, and nobody's trying to cheat you out of your ballot.
Right.
And then if it passes that test, then we send the ballot out, and then when the voted ballot comes back again with the signature verification and whatnot. So we're looking out for your vote and making sure your neighbor's not grabbing it out of your
Right.
mailbox, voting it, and
Right.
signing your name and sending it
Right.
back in. So
Right.
those things, while sometimes they may appear a little overbearing, they're there for good and
For
valid
protection.
in the big
Yeah. Right. Right. And that's a good thing to hear, that sometimes it could be skewed a different way. And so to hear from somebody who works with this every day, it's good to hear from that perspective. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions or concerns or suggestions or anything that they want to share with Lynn?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Vontice?
Yes, I have a question. Okay, the ones that don't have like a Georgia ID or a Georgia driver's license that may want to register to vote, is there any other type of form or ID or some that they may be able to use in order to register to vote?
Well, there are a couple of things you should know about that. The driver's license or ID, Georgia ID card, is only required if you use the online portal to register to vote. You can register to vote by filling out a form anytime without showing any ID in the state of Georgia. Yeah. And so in Georgia, we don't get identification on the front end of the process. And as you know, if you vote in Georgia, you show your photo ID when you go to the polls to vote on election day. And so the voter registration end of it is really quite easy and made more convenient if you do have a driver's license or a Georgia ID card, because you can then avail yourself of the online application.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Yes, you was say that for the ballot, if they cross it or if they circle it, that means that if they cross it or have a circle or even like just put like a line under the name they want, this vote won't be counted?
Well, when we count the ballots, we run them through a machine that reads the votes. And that machine is programmed to look at the ovals beside the person's name.
Okay.
So the way it works is, if the oval, let's say that a person does make a check mark on there and a portion of the check mark goes to the oval, chances are the machine will kick it out and say, yeah, we're not sure about this ballot. You need to look at this ballot and see. But if someone doesn't hit that oval at all beside the candidate's name, chances are it will not be counted at all. So that's why we really go, some might say overboard almost, with the instructions that are inside there, telling people, do this and please be aware of this. And, so the voters are responsible for making sure that they properly mark their ballot.
That is really important to know.
It is important to know, because we have seen ballots in the past. The machine will kick out ballots for review under certain circumstances. And what we've seen most of the time is a person that, as I said earlier, they will either put a check or an X mark there, or a lot of people, not a lot, but we've seen it some, where they'll scratch through, sometimes vigorously, the person they don't want to vote for, or they'll circle the whole name of the person they do want to vote for. So, but with 100,000 ballots being cast just in Richmond County, it would be impossible to count them all by hand. So we have to depend on machines to do that for us. And so that's the voter's job, to do their job, to make sure their ballots are marked correctly.
Okay. And I think that's a good educational piece too. A lot of times people may feel like, is my vote being counted? But you're making sure you're doing your part. Like, we have a part, we have to follow instructions, we have to do it the way it says.
You really do.
And sometimes we want to take sure, because we want to do it the way we want to do it. But you can't when there's a machine that votes, and a machine can't see a circle, a machine can't see a check mark. It has to be this oval, because that's what it's looking for.
That's right.
So we'll make sure that when we talk to people, we'll inform them, hey, make sure you fill out your ballot correctly.
Here's one more thing you can tell them too. In the U.S. Senate race, with those 20 candidates in there, just this week, I personally have been witness to probably 15 people that have come in the office who have spoiled their ballot because they inadvertently voted for more than one person in that long slew of candidates. They didn't know they were on the circle. They didn't get the directions that they were and they marked more than one, realized it. And then, once you mess it up like that, you can't erase them. or you can't do the mark throughs and stuff. So then it
Right.
requires spoiling the ballot and getting the replacement ballot.
But they are able to get a replacement ballot.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
sure. If you turn in the one that's messed up, and we'll send you another one, no problem.
Okay, that's good to know as well.
Okay.
All this, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm so full of information. I can't
Yo,
talk
keep
about it enough.
sharing. We have time. Keep sharing.
But these are things that people need to know. As far as people, so we've sent out all these thousands and thousands of absentee ballots by mail. 30,000 today. There will be many people who have received that ballot who are going to change their mind and decide they want to go to the polls, and that's okay. But if voters do that, it's imperative that they take their ballot that we've sent them through the mail with them to the polling place. And by doing that, they're going to exchange votes, because you only get one vote, right?
Right,
So
right,
if you send the ballot to you by mail, we need to know about that ballot before we can put it in
right.
the voting booth, because you only get the one vote. And so for those people who come to the polls and don't bring that ballot with them, they're going to have to step aside, and then you're going to have to they'll have to call our office
Oh,
to try
wow.
and get it resolved for them. And if they can't get through to our office, then the voter will have to vote a provisional ballot. So it's going to take them longer to remedy that if they don't do it ahead of election day, or either bring that ballot with them. So that's a really important thing to know. We are trying to mitigate that by setting up a 8-person phone bank within our office, a call center, with a phone number that's specific for poll managers to call who have voters in who have spoiled ballots. So that
Okay.
those people will be dedicated to that one thing. And we feel like we're going to need it.
Now, with the absentee ballot, so people, you don't send them to everybody. They have to be requested.
Yes, people have to ask for them.
Okay. So you have a percentage of people that request them, but in the event you change your mind and want to vote in person, you need to bring that with you.
Please.
So that you can kind of transfer that. So, because you only have one vote.
The voters will be glad that they did, because with the volume of people that are going to vote in November, you just have to imagine it. In my mind's eye, I see a scenario where a person comes in with their ballot, or worse than that, they come in without their ballot.
Right.
Phone calls are made to our office. It takes 5 or 10 minutes to get through. And what happens is it slows that voter down. But what does it do to everyone who's in line behind them? So it's just going to, compound itself when those things happen. So
Yeah.
you need to be smart about those. Voters need to decide their strategy for what works best for them. If they're uncomfortable being around crowds, then vote by mail. Great.
Right.
You get your ballot, you vote, you send it back to us, you send it back to us. Figure out a way to get it back to us that makes you comfortable.
Yeah.
Are you okay putting a stamp on it and put it in the mail? Then do that.
Right.
If you'd rather use a drop box, do that, or if you'd rather bring it to us, do that. But figure out your plan, follow it through, and make sure your ballot gets cast.
And that's important. I just thought about that. So I do decide to do absentee ballot, but I don't trust the mail. So I have 2 other options. I can drop it in a locked box, or I can bring it directly to you in your office.
That's right.
So there's really no excuse. We have every opportunity to cast our ballot one way or the other.
We do, and it's all about having the information to do it, and do it timely, and to do it in the right way, so that you don't run into hiccups along the way. And so
Right.
I appreciate so much being on with you tonight. And
Oh no, I appreciate you for accepting my offer. I really do. I try to keep people informed. I try to share information as I can, but I always go to the experts, because I'm not the expert. So I know who to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, would you come on and talk? And that's pretty much what Tuesday Talks is about. How do I connect to the resources that I have, and what information can they share to the people that I connect to, so that they can be well informed in whatever it is, whether that's voting, whether that's anything in the community. We have a lot of things coming up in our community. And talk about the things that are on the ballot. You said there's something with the Constitution or amendments, or
such a full ballot. We have the president, 2 U.S. Senate races on there. Then we have Congress and state senator, state representative, a bunch of local people like district attorney, sheriff, probate court judge, commissioner. All those people are on. We have 3 constitutional amendments and 2 statewide referendums. Don't ask me what they're about. Get a sample ballot and look at it, because I don't know what all this stuff is. And then we do have the very last thing on the ballot is would be the school board candidates, and then the Board of Education reimposition of their 1-cent sales tax. And so there are important matters on the ballot.
Right. Yeah, and I think people don't think about those things when they go to vote. They just think about, I'm picking a name, but no, there's information you're going to have to read to say whether you agree or not with them doing this, like the referendums and the amendments and, you know, those types of things, which I'm not that savvy on because I have to sit there and read it myself. So I'm definitely going to have to get a sample ballot.
Speaking of that, when you get your sample ballot, we have on our website, and so does the Georgia Secretary of State, a summary of the constitutional amendment. So it kind of breaks it down into layman's terms a little bit.
Okay.
It gives you the short version of it, if you will, to give you the context of it at least. So those tools are available also.
And your website is what?
It's augustaga.gov/vote.
Yeah, so I'm used to the Augusta GA website and just, you know, perusing around, finding what I need. But for folks that aren't aware, augustaga.gov/vote. That's easy. That's easy. Well, thank you, Lynn, for joining us, and thank you for sharing information and getting us up to speed on voting one-on-one. That I call it voting one-on-one for a reason, because we all need the right information to be able to make a conscious decision to vote, cast our ballot, and to do it the right way.
We do. I agree, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We've enjoyed talking with you and look forward to seeing you in November, if not before, because a lot of us will probably be coming to you ahead of time. But if there's anything that we can do, just let me know. If you need volunteers, I have a pool of folks that I send stuff to. So send me whatever it is the requirements are, and I'll pass it along to my team.
Sure thing. Sounds great. We appreciate it. And the same back to you. Anything we can do to help you or anyone who's listening to this podcast, please don't hesitate to call us. That's what we're there for.
Thank you so much. You ladies all have a good evening. Happy Tuesday. And encourage someone to vote. Encourage someone to register to vote. We have until October the 5th to get all unregistered voters to register. So spread the word.
Appreciate all the information.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, ladies, for joining us.
All right, Tonia, thank you.
You're welcome.
Y'all take care.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Y'all too.